Welcome to the New Warehouse Podcast, the podcast for those that are curious about what's possible inside their four walls. Before we get into this episode, let's hear a word from our sponsors that make this all possible. In my operations years, it seemed like we were always trying to find more space or we needed a quick storage solution for a special project. That's why when I discovered Pallet and their Pallet Picks solution, I was excited. Made from ultra-strong engineered honeycomb structured board, these corrugated shelving units can support up to 1,100 pounds. They're definitely stronger than they look, and they come to you flat packed for easy installation in minutes. I've built them and utilized them myself. They provide customizable configurations with up to 400 pick faces. If you need storage quick or you need to maximize space utilization, you need Pallet. Check them out at palletgroup.com. That's PALLITE group.com. If you're listening to this podcast, then you're most likely looking to discover the latest innovations in warehousing, logistics, automation, and supply chain. Why not do some of that discovery in person when the Intralogistics Conference and Trade Show hits Dallas on September 16th and 17th. This free show will be at the K. Bailey Hutchison Convention Center, and I'm excited to be on the floor to explore cutting-edge technologies, see live product demonstrations, and hear from industry experts. Register for free today at intralogisticsusa.com and join me in Dallas on September 16th and 17th. I'll see you there. Thank you to our sponsors, and now let's get to the podcast.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hey, it's Kevin with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. And today we are going to talk robotics, and we're going to talk to Rishabh Agarwal, who is the CEO and co-founder at Pure Robotics. We're going to talk a little bit about their founding story, how they came to start Pure Robotics, how they landed in the material handling space, some of the use cases that they're doing. They have a very interesting automated pallet jack that is doing loading and unloading of trailers. And if you're a longtime listener of the podcast, you know that I love this use case. I'm so very interested to learn more about this. And we're also going to talk a little bit about kind of where is he seeing the market in terms of applications that are moving down market a little bit to the small and mid-market players and where they kind of fit within that as well. So we're going to dive into it today. So Rishabh, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you, Kevin. Really appreciate the opportunity. Excited to talk about Pure and the work we are doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to get you on here and happy to learn about Pure too as well. I had a video sent my way of you guys a few weeks ago, maybe a month or two ago, and I was very intrigued to learn more. So I'm happy to get you on the podcast here, and hopefully we can help the audience learn more about you all too as well. So why don't we kind of start around Pure Robotics and kind of the story a little bit. You're the co-founder, so we want to hear this founding story of how you kind of came to start this company. But I'm also pretty interested because I saw as I was looking at your LinkedIn, right, you started Pure Robotics almost right out of school, it seems like. So I'm very curious, how did you decide I want to do something in the material handling space? So tell us a little bit about that background.
So the reason why we started Pure Robotics and why we focus on this particular space is I belong from a manufacturing background. Growing up, my entire childhood, my dad owns a manufacturing company, and then even my cousins, my other family members, they're all in this manufacturing space. So always saw that side of small and mid-market manufacturing companies and the struggles they are facing. So yeah, I mean, growing up, I was playing with machines ever since I can remember, and then I chose mechanical engineering to
Sure.
build machines. Quickly realized robots are the new machines. So
Yeah.
robots kind of became kind of like the point of interest. I did work with Siemens a little bit, but that was like during my college times and right after I graduated for a small time in Germany. But during that time, we were experiencing or working with several different robotic systems. And that's where I realized like there's like a massive gap when it comes to how easy the technology is to use, right? And if we look into historically any technology, the point at scale is not when it starts doing the application, it's when it becomes easy enough that people can adopt it, right? So that's what we are doing at Peer. We are trying to build these systems, these kind of physical intelligence platforms that can be so simple so that people on the shop floor can integrate and deploy it. We are not there yet, but that's kind of the route we are going towards.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I love that. This kind of came from the family background a little bit, like growing up around this. So tell us a little bit about for people that aren't familiar with Pure Robotics themselves. I mean, what are like some of your offerings? What are you kind of tackling within the material handling space?
Absolutely. I mean, the main area that we focus on is automating pallet movement across manufacturing lines or warehousing lines, right? So the platform Peer 3000 is designed in such a way that it learns from humans in real time because it's a vision-based system. So what happens is that we have 6 cameras in total, so you can switch the robot into a follow me mode. It follows the human, but at the same time, it's learning about that space. So it's mapping the
Okay.
entire facility. It's understanding the pick locations, drop locations, and then for the user to tell the robot to pick and drop, it follows very similar lean principles that are there in manufacturing today, right? So you have zones marked up. Because we are camera based, we detect that zones, we add it on our mapping environment or the map that the robot uses. So user can literally just tell the robot that go from zones XYZ and drop the pallets to, let's say, ABC, and the robot keeps doing it in circular, just like an operation. So we are not programming it like a mission, right? Like go there, do this, then come here, then do this. No, that's too complicated for people on the floor.
Okay.
What we are doing is similar how a human does, right? When I've been told that, hey, let's move or let's empty this dock location and take all the pallets that are being unloaded to our storage, there's not a person is not coming every single time. Okay, which pallet now,
Yeah.
right? Like they see that space, they see where the pallet is, detect it, and go and drop it into storage. So that's exactly how robots operate, which is intelligence is inside the robots where it goes, detects that okay, there's a pallet or not. If there's no, goes to the next location by default, picks up that pallet and takes it to storage, right? But human is in the control and they are teaching the robot.
Gotcha. Interesting. So the robot is, I mean, the robot seems like sounds like it's kind of constantly learning, right? Is it? Yeah.
Exactly. It's constantly moving around, it's constantly detecting, it's providing that information back to the user. Like I can give another example.
Sure.
We also work on, as you pointed out, trailer loading and unloading, right? So we do trailer loading and unloading application as well. But I always say that whenever the trailer doors open, it's a box full of surprises, right?
That's very true. Yes.
Yeah, we would never know if there's like a pallet broken down there, if the material is kind of fallen all, right? Like
Yeah.
we don't know that. But how Peer 3000, our platform, works is that the moment it starts doing that application, the vision system goes and checks whether this pallet is in right condition or not. And for any reason, if it cannot pick up that pallet and take it outside the trailer, what it does, it doesn't just get stuck there and wait for a human to come and figure out how to do it. It takes the photo that, hey, what's happening, provides a context that, hey, let's say the pallet is twisted too much, I can't physically pick it anymore. The user gets that intervention right there, that that's the status, that's what's happening, what do you want the robot to do? Should it just come outside the trailer so you can take a forklift, or if a person wants to intervene they can do it, or do you want the robot to try again, so it will automatically goes and tries again that particular moment? But Every time this happens, it adds on to the robot's memory where we train the model to detect what was user's preferred action at that point.
Mm.
So next time the same condition happens, it doesn't need that human input anymore. It can take that action which human has determined last time onwards. So that's how it's constantly learning and it's constantly understanding what's happening. And it's very kind of on the floor level. Because every time we do that, we see that scenario, we learn from that scenario, and we allow users, humans, to take that call, what is right for them. And
Mm.
that's how kind of the robot keeps on becoming better for their specific operations.
Mm. Interesting. And so I mean, it sounds like the robot itself is thinking and acting more like a human would than a robot would, I guess,
Yeah.
in contrast, right? Which is pretty interesting. So I'm curious, like, because you mentioned there, specifically when you started talking there in the beginning of that about, it's not mission based, right? It's based on kind of like what the human is interacting with it. And tell us a little bit, like, why did you decide to go in that direction? Like, what was the trigger that you saw or the thing that you noticed in operations that you're like, actually, this makes more sense to do it in this way?
I mean, if you look into the operations versus missions, right? Like there is a mission where you tell exactly this particular thing to do, right? And it does that. I'm not saying that's not needed. I'm saying most of the warehouses and manufacturing, so when it comes to material movement, they operate in an operations sense. So it's not just one task of moving one pallet from here to there. It's, let's say, feeding a production line. So there are 10 lines, and you're constantly checking if the raw material is empty in one of them, and then you bring into another line, right? But the challenge becomes if you do mission based, you have to create all these potential permutation combinations, and a human or even your WMS or ERP system would have to do that.
Mm.
Now, if you are a large company taking a complete project where you're integrating every single endpoints and making sure that your entire system is integrated to WMS, ERP, all the way to the floor, sure, mission works, but it adds on to the cost. But if you're a mid-scale company which wants to start adopting the robot and start seeing value from day one, you probably don't have even a WMS system that you want to integrate with today, slowly build it on. The operations flows goes in seamlessly because what it allows them to do is exactly what humans are doing on the floor today, which is making decisions, right? And you control what decisions the robot can make and what decisions it cannot. So human is still in charge. It's just that they're giving that enough freedom to the robot of saying that, hey, these are my zones. If you see a pallet there in this zone, pick it up, take it to a storage location. If you don't see a pallet in that zone, go to next location, check again, and keep doing it on the floor. And if you don't see in any of that, just go and charge yourself, right? So that kind of decision making is very similar to how other peers would work.
Yeah.
That's why we call kind of our robots as well peer robotics, because
Okay.
we truly want the robot to feel like a peer. If you want to do an application, if you want to do an operation, you can just bring in peer robotics or peer essentially, and it can automate that workflow for you.
Very interesting there, and I'm curious too, because you told us about your little family history, right, in manufacturing. Like, what do when you started to build this? I mean, what was the family's reaction to? Are they like, yeah, I need this in my manufacturing operations, or what was like what was the reaction there?
Yeah, I mean, I would always joke about it is that peer robotics is successful if we are even able to sell my own family. They're a very small scale business, but if we can bring
Okay.
into their
Sure.
application line, I
Yeah.
think that would be a mark of, okay, we have now crossed that
Gotcha.
chasm and robots are universal. But that being said, the reason why we are so, I would say almost as a company, we are very adverse towards quote unquote programming a robot is because I've seen firsthand it that like my dad has a manufacturing line before he bought some machineries from different countries. And the problem was that whenever they had to change their operations, they required specialized engineers to come and program it. Now, if you do it once or twice, it's fine. But if your operation relies on constant adaptability and changing, the cost piles up. And most of the industries don't have robotics engineers on their payroll. They don't have
Sure.
these specialized engineers kind of operating that. Warehouses were not designed for robotics engineers to operate out of. Like they were more operators, people on the floor doing applications, right? And I think that's the mindset switch. The problem is that today, Like, I'm not saying our robot is completely 100% not programmed today. Like, we are
Hmm.
going towards that route. But majority of the solutions when we went in and we saw, they were developed from robotics engineers' perspective.
Mm.
So they would come in, they would program, they would deploy. But anything changes, you're back to square one. So you either pay those robotics engineers to come back again, or you hire a robotics engineer on your payroll to ensure that these robotic systems keeps working. And that kept the technology out of hands for a lot of people. Like, majority of them don't use it because they're worried that they're small enough that they can't really use this technology, right?
Mm.
Which is not the case. It's not that they are small for automating their operations. When they say they are small enough, it's essentially they are small for having some complex technology that they don't know how to use. And that's kind of the barrier we see we should cross in order to make robotics kind of universally accepted.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's such a such a true statement that you said is that the majority of warehouse operators and stuff, they don't have a robotics engineer on staff, right, or someone that even maybe has worked with robots in the past, right? I mean, there's still a huge swath of the market that's like hasn't had any kind of automation at this point. I mean, there's still plenty of operations that are still picking off paper too, as well, right? So I mean, there's a huge kind of gap in between the people that have automation and don't have automation, right? There's still a huge thing to penetrate. So I love that you're kind of taking the approach of like, okay, well, how do I reduce some of that complexity, right? And how do I make it easy to bring in robotics into warehouse operations for that? So let's talk a little bit about kind of like what you're seeing in the market itself. I mean, we kind of talked about like, all right, not every operation has these, robotics engineers on staff, or even in some cases just an engineer at all, right? To look at that. So what are you seeing though out there in the market, like in terms of some of the challenges for operations? Because I mean, I think it's very evident, right, that lots of people are looking at automation. They're trying to move towards automation. Maybe they don't know which way to go, but what are some of the challenges that you're seeing that are kind of driving this move towards robotics and automation?
I mean, the drive aspect is more universal, which is
Mm.
they are genuinely facing this challenge of labor shortages, and they are trying to figure out how to attract more people towards manufacturing and warehousing operations. People don't want to do that.
Mm.
And for a fair reason, right? Like,
Sure.
it's a repetitive task that you got to do every day, day in, day out. You're not learning, you're not becoming better, you're not helping other operations, right? So it becomes very difficult for people to continue on that role, right? They want to grow up, they want to grow into the next level of operations, and it's harder to find a replacement. And I think that's why everyone is looking into it. And it's like, that's the lowest hanging fruit. We need to automate. It can add value in their operation. So that's not a challenge today when it comes to whether they should automate or not. The problem comes is, what is the route to automate? What is the approach here? There's
Mm.
too much noise. Like, there are too many things out there. When you start looking into it, you almost get confused, right?
Yeah.
Which technology I should pick up, when should I pick up, what would be the handholding period for it, when it would become profitable for my business, right? Because even that ROI equation is very difficult. I know there are some business models like robotics as a service or CapEx business models. They're all good. But in the end, the problem becomes that how do you justify the return on investment, even if it's on a monthly basis,
Mm.
right? And I think that's where one answer that all the robotics companies, like including us, would have to do is justify the return on investment, which is directly correlated like from day one. It's not like, oh, after 1 year you will start seeing the benefit, right? No, I don't think a lot of companies have that bandwidth to wait for 1 year and see what is the value that they're going to see,
Mm.
right? Because the technology is new. So I think, and you pointed out one thing which I want to like connect with this chain of thought, is that most of the operations might even be on paper today,
Sure.
right? Which is true. Now, if you integrate robots, is it the other way around? Like, first bring your paper technology to digital, then you can come into robotics? Or should it be the other way around, where if you bring the robots, your paper technology is also digitalized?
Mm.
Right now, that's the question that they're also asking. So whenever we talk to customers, they ask about the same thing. Hey, if I don't have an IT system in place, if I don't have XYZ thing in place, can I really use your robot? and what would be the value. We believe that robotics can even expedite that digital adoption. Because take an example of pallet again. We pick up a pallet from the trailer, we bring it out, but at the same time, because we are vision based, we can take a photo of all the barcodes on that pallet. Now,
Okay.
previously, what someone would have to come in and write it down or even scan manually that barcodes can directly be recorded from the robot and send it to their ERP system, WMS system, or if they don't have it, the robot itself can manage a database where it knows that this particular barcode was picked from there and it's been stored there. So that can be the gateway for these customers to start integrating that digital technology,
Mm.
right? So I believe that physical labor is easier to automate in that sense, like, or it's more justifiable to automate. But then that would open up the door for a lot of digital value that these customers can get, which is also missing today in the warehouses and the manufacturing lines. So that's going to be challenging, but good thing is because of AI, because of a lot of these kind of agentic vision applications that we are seeing a lot of companies doing, it's becoming possible that now you can integrate robots with these AI technologies to add much more value than just physical automation. And I think that would be the tipping point where a lot of adoption would start happening even more.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's very interesting to point out there that not only, are you using the vision to just have the robot learn its environment and recognize that it's a pallet, let me engage with this pallet, et cetera, but also to capture that information, right? So now if it captures that information, and will it feed that back into the WMS if need be, or yeah?
Yeah. It's completely API driven. So what happens
Okay.
is that at this point that we start collecting that data, how do we want to feed it back to the customer is up to them. Like they can decide whether they want to pull it directly from our servers, if they want us to send it directly to their WMS system, or even like a local storage system. Sometimes customers don't have WMS or these kind of other IT side. So what they might have is even an Excel, but they can even feed that Excel. Like they can even take that data that every trailer, what were the barcodes taken from there. So they can still have that level of information. And as they implement WMS or other ERP systems, they can connect it with it. So that's kind of what we believe. Now there are a lot of other value adds that we are not even touching today, right? Like
Sure.
imagine damage detection. Was
Right.
there a pallet damaged? Was there a box damaged on site the pallet, right? So how would claims be affected? There are technologies that are doing it. There are humans that are doing it, but everything is disconnected, right? And I think the robot could literally be that connecting tool for all these digital technologies or physical automation.
Yeah, very interesting, and interesting to hear, how that's kind of built in already, right? And it sounds like there's a bunch of possibilities potentially there that you could do with that technology on board. So now you told us a little bit about, kind of the use cases, right? Basic pallet movement, loading, unloading of trailers. Tell us a little bit about, from pure robotics perspective. I mean, obviously there's a lot of stuff on the market that can move a pallet, right? So what's the differentiator for you in the market? Like what do you think differs, from other solutions to pure robotics?
I mean, if there's one thing I would nail down on or keep focusing on is ease of use. It has to be easy that anyone on the floor can use it. There are several technologies, there are several other solutions out there that can automate pallet movement, but we are working towards making it the easiest possible solution. So anyone can adopt it, whether it's a large scale enterprise or even like a mom and pop warehouse that is operating with 30, 40 people, right? There should not be any barrier. The only way to do that is by making sure that you don't require robotics engineers to go and program or go and automate every site,
Right.
right? So that's kind of the threshold we are working towards, and that's what differentiates us. Every other technology that is out there is complex. They need kind of specialized engineers to come and program. And once they are deployed, they stay at the same value, right? So let's say you automate your inbound operations. It's not that tomorrow the robot would also be start able to helping you out for trailer loading, right? It's fixed. It's the same value. That's not how human capital works, right? Humans constantly learn and they do other operations. And we think robots are going to do that as well. That's where we, from the get go, made that decision that we need to be vision first. not just for localization, not just for mapping or navigation.
Mm.
We needed vision as almost like the intelligence layer. We used our own models to train our own palette detections, train some other aspects, because as we kind of get more data, we unlock more capabilities. And finally, what we enabled is human in the loop aspect, which has not existed today. There are collaborative arms that have phenomenally changed the market. But if you look into mobile robots or
Yeah.
AMRs or every pallet movement solution, there is no way a human can intervene and teach the platform,
Mm.
right? And that's a very big gap because every operation is unique. You can't ask the customer to change their operation to fit the robot, right?
Right. Yeah.
But if there's a way you can switch or you can train the robot to fit your operations, that increases the adoption rate, right? Or that makes it easy again. So it comes down to the ease of use. That's kind of the vision, but we bring in human in the loop so that the human can train the robot and our models
Mm.
can become better based on that human feedback. So that's kind of like the core differentiator, which is ease of use, vision-based system, and then finally human in the loop, allowing the robot to become better every time.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, and I think that's very, very interesting to do that, and kind of goes to what you said about, okay, well, this can go from mom and pop to an enterprise level, kind of covers the full spectrum almost in a sense there, right? So, so now let's talk a little bit about, because there's a lot of talk about physical AI, right? So maybe define physical AI from your perspective, right? And is that something you're utilizing, and is that different from, like you just mentioned, AMR or AGV, right? Like, where does physical AI come into play here, and what is it?
Yeah, I mean, I take a lens that robots, by definition, what makes them different from machines is their reprogrammability, right? Like if you define a machine, if you define a robot, the difference would be, from our point of view, is that robot would be more generic.
Mm.
Like they can be programmed again or they can be changed to do other operations. They're not fixed like a machine. But I think that's not the case with typical automation solutions today or typical robotics today as well.
Mm.
And physical AI, in my view, is that unlock, which essentially enables the robot to do that flexible operations, to do that dynamic or adapt to that dynamic requirement because of the intelligence on board. Right. So it's, by definition, physical AI is AI that is controlling physical systems or can add value in the physical world. But at the same time, for robotics, I would take a much detailed view where I would say that physical AI for robot systems like pallet movement solution would essentially enable it to be so simple that, again, people on the floor can do that, right? If they want to adapt it, they don't have to know that programming aspect because the AI inside the robot is adapting to that particular system. Let's take an example there, right? Which is the same thing, barcode detection. When we started working on it, we don't know how we were able to do barcode or what is the exact kind of pallet broken down case or even like box broken down case, right? But because of these AI tools, now we can start adopting these technologies inside the robot. So it's gradually adding more value for the customer without adding cost for the customer, right? In the end, it's more value for the user for the same application layer. And that's only possible because of this physical AI or the work that is happening, whether it's on even like ChatGPT or Gemini. Like Gemini has a big ER model. They do a lot of work in that area where how they can collect data from the robots and add value in the physical layer. And I think that's kind of physical AI for us. Like physical AI is really going to enable to unlock more value for the users because the robot would be much more dynamic and robot would be able to do much many applications than just physical automation because of that intelligence.
Mm.
So
Yeah, very interesting there, and it's interesting to kind of hear about that and how it kind of fits into the landscape, right? Because I think there's a lot of there's a lot of buzzwords out there. There's a lot of acronyms, right? So it's kind of like,
yeah, I mean,
yeah, I think especially for, we're talk about, kind of the mom and pop or the people that haven't really gotten to that level yet. I mean, it can be difficult to understand, like, what is this or what is that? And how do I navigate some of these things?
I mean, they don't need to understand what is
Yeah,
AI in that part, right? Like it's almost, it doesn't matter for them. In
sure.
the end, the point is that is the robot able to make the right decisions for the right application or right use case, right?
Mm.
So I think in the end for customers, it's not going to be, it's not going to make any difference whether we call it physical AI, embodied intelligence, or AI, right? Or robot. Doesn't matter. AMR, we can take any terminology. I think all we need to talk about is what value we offer to you.
Mm.
So let's say we automate your material movement when it comes to pallet. We provide data from the pallet directly, from the barcodes directly. We help you with claim settlement because we now take every image, if every pallet we pick or drop. In the end, that's kind of the value for them. And I think physical AI, embodied AI, different tools that we can name it is just literally a tool that enables us to do that.
Mm.
What is new and beneficial that it's becoming so easy to adopt that this value would start trickling down to those mom and pop shops, right? And that's going to be the big game changer for these industries.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that'll be a huge unlock there. And I think it is getting more accessible, right? For especially from companies like yourselves, making it more accessible to be able to do that. And I think that's a huge thing, right? I feel like it's interesting because I feel like a lot of companies chase like the chase the big logos, right? But it's like the big logos have the resources, right? So like, sure, like you got to get somebody to say yes, but like, is that as much of a challenge as it is to build for like down market instead? And if you can fill that gap, like you could fill like any gap, really. I feel like so I love that you guys are focusing on that too as well. And it's really interesting to hear kind of like how you're thinking about the human interaction with it and like the human adaptability to it, and how can they bring it easily into their operation and have it fit into what their operation is already, right? Like you said earlier, like we don't want to change our operation because of the robot. Like the robot needs to like conform to our operation, much like when we hire a new person. Like we're not going to redo the whole operation because we just hired one person, right? Like unless they come in and they're a design engineer and they want to redesign, right? But yeah, I mean, I love that fact. Yeah.
I mean, and you can almost think about it as that's going to constantly keep getting better,
Mm.
right? And that should be the objective. Like once you adopt these technologies, the goal is that how are you even going to increase your revenue? What can you do next to add more value, right? And I think physical AI enables that. Like our own technology enables that. And I think the market is going to go towards that direction where people are going to ask more from robots. It's not just going to be physical automation. It's about data. It's about how you can make our operations better tomorrow, right? And if you think about warehouses, let's take an example in the warehousing specific condition. There are peak seasons and then there are kind of like normal periods, right?
Sure.
And if you imagine peak seasons would have more outbound because probably a warehouse is shipping more or selling more during a peak season. And for non-peak season, there's typically more inbound because the packages are being stored, it's being replenished, or it's slower, but then it's more inbound driven, right? If you adopt a technology just for the inbound, then what are you going to do during your peak season when most of your labor is going to be required for the outbound? And if you do vice versa, what are you going to do during the non-peak season when most of your labor would be involved in the inbound operations? And I think the answer here is that the robots would have to adopt that as your operations changes, the intelligence enables the robot to go from one operation to another without you changing your operation at all. Again, it's hard, it's
Yeah.
difficult, right? It would require some time to become that universally accepted, but I think that's the right direction. Where the robot, which is doing trailer unloading, would also help in trailer loading. The robot that is doing trailer unloading is now taking that same pallet to the storage location, or let's say feeding a stretch wrapper. Unless that kind of universality comes into the robots, it becomes that universal in terms of application. I think the adoption would be limited to only large companies, right? Because large company might get 50 trailers a day. A mid company would get probably 4 trailers or 10 trailers a day. So the same cost of robot can be justified for 20 trailers, but not probably for 4 trailers. But if the
Sure.
same robot can also do inbound operations or feed your storage or feed your production line, then the value is there. And I think that's kind of the direction we are going as an industry.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really, I mean, that's a good direction to go in. I would say for sure. So now tell us a little bit about kind of the future of Pure Robotics. We've kind of talked about the market and, who you're trying to serve. And I guess more importantly, how you're trying to serve the market in a sense and some of the use cases you're tackling as well. But what does the future of Pure Robotics look like?
Yeah, we are currently at this point where we are working with some of our early adopters, building these solutions with them and scaling their operations. At the same time, we are taking a hard look at our own technology stack and coming up with, okay, what can we do to remove complexity from our own system, right? Like today, there is actually an engineer required to go and train the users, to train some of the initial aspects. But then what can we do to even reduce that friction point? Because in a customer's facility also, the main operator might change with time. So it should be again as simple that even if a new operator comes along, they know how to work with the robots. It's intuitive enough, right? So that's kind of the direction we are going. At the same time, also unlocking more values. So our early adopters started with just pallet movement on the ground, but now we are already doing trailer unloading for them. We have started working on the pallet or barcode detections for them. And our long-term goal is that how we are gonna connect the entire warehouse, right? Like how we are gonna connect from trailer unloading all the way to trailer loading while providing them visibility of each and every pallet that we are moving. So that's our long-term view. It applies to both manufacturing and warehouses. But that being said, we are going with the same kind of like crawl, walk, run step where we are
Sure.
crawling right now, making sure that we are providing that value, and we'll slowly start picking up the pace there.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, and we're definitely interested to see kind of the evolution there and how things continue to grow for Pure Robotics, and very interested to learn more in that in the future. And really appreciate you coming on the show today to share with us about Pure Robotics and also your perspective on the market and kind of where things are heading. If people are interested in connecting with you or learning more about Pure Robotics, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, I mean, our website is the best location, peerrobotics.ai. You can take a look at all the solutions we offer, but I would highly, highly recommend don't hesitate reaching out, not just to us, but in general. Even if you're a small company, reach out. We would be happy to talk, happy to discuss about what we are seeing. If we are not a right fit, we'll say from day one that, hey, this might not work together. We might not be there today. But that being said, the conversation is always happy or always useful to even understand whether you can actually adopt these technologies or not. So I would recommend all your listeners that don't hesitate reaching out. Even if you're evaluating us or anyone else, like reach out to them, talk to them. Don't think that you are too small. You're not too small. You can use automation. Automation would add value. But yes, we need to figure out the complexity part. And that's what we are focusing on.
All right, fantastic. And we'll definitely put all that information at thenewwarehouse.com as well as in the show notes here. So, Rishabh, thank you very much for your time on the show today.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Enjoyed this episode? Make sure you are subscribed to the podcast, and for more content from the New Warehouse, find us on LinkedIn and YouTube. Links to subscribe can be found in the show notes, and for everything The New Warehouse, head to thenewwarehouse.com.